What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. I am your host, Brandon Baker, joined as always by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. We are brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Twitter, wherever you get your podcast at, under 30 Minutes of Hell. And we appreciate you guys tuning in to listen to some Arkansas basketball talk. As you can probably see, it is a cold, dreary day in January, and our mood kind of reflects that about Arkansas basketball. The Hogs just dropped their third straight SEC game to open up SEC play, a 22-point loss at Florida. It's never fun playing in Gainesville. We knew this team already had struggles going in, so it wasn't too different than what we expected. Still disappointing, still frustrating, still a lot of things that we don't like to see. There were a couple things that we can talk about that were good, moral victories again at this point, I guess. But Arkansas has lost their last three games by a combined total of 64 points, which is the largest three-game losing margin in school history. That breaks a record that stood for over 90 years. I believe it was 1930 when they had a three-game stretch where they lost by 63 total points.
It's ridiculous, man.
So that's where we're at. That's how Arkansas basketball is going. So even like in the Georgia game, we had some things to point to in the second half. We tied them and scored 42-42 after halftime. There were some positives. Tremont Mark had a really good game. We talked about effort after the Georgia game. There were a lot of things that we kind of liked, but they just got their butts kicked against Florida. I don't know. I don't know that the effort was that much worse than anything we've seen. I don't know if that was the real culprit. They just were not up to the task again in this one. And obviously effort played a role in it, but so did shot making and defense and pretty much everything else that you can possibly do wrong on a basketball court. So it started bad and it never really got better throughout the game. There were a couple of stretches where the Hogs looked okay. We should bring up right off the bat, Layden Blocker and Joseph Pinion both had really good games. We have not seen a lot of consistent minutes for either of them this season, but when they both came in and joined Jeremiah Davenport on the court, the three of them were kind of the center of a 2-3 zone, a very rare zone defense for Musselman that actually slowed Florida down a little bit and let the Hogs go on just a little miniature run. Joseph Pinion hit a three and had a tough layup. Blocker had a steal almost as soon as he got in the game. So some really good things from both of them. Blocker had 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 assist, 1 block. Just a very well-rounded game. Just stuff that we've been seeing from Blocker whenever he gets minutes this season. It's been really kind of confusing as to why he hasn't been getting as many minutes. Do you guys have any thoughts on Layden and maybe not why he hasn't been getting minutes, but what are you thinking about him? Should he be on the court more at this point?
Yeah, first of all, let me hop in and say you got to give credit where it's due. Props to Blocker and Pinion both for stepping up in a game they weren't really expected to. They haven't seen many minutes like you mentioned, and you got to admire them being prepared for whatever happens. Same with Davenport. We've kind of seen staggering minutes with him as well, and he gave us a little spark as well. But Brandon, I couldn't tell you honestly why Blocker's not playing. We've said it from probably our second or third episode of this podcast that he's been one of our most consistent guys on the defensive end. He's been our best guy on the defensive end. And you almost wonder if maybe Muss doesn't see him meshing as much with the group of guys that we have, because he's obviously a more defensive minded guy, and we don't have any of that on this team. So you wonder if it's maybe a chemistry thing, if just Musselman doesn't see him being as much of a factor, since we are more of an quote unquote offensive minded team, if we even want to call ourselves that. But a stat that I pulled from about Blocker from JC on Twitter is when he plays 15 or more minutes, he's done that 8 games. He's averaged 22 minutes in those 8 games. He's averaging over 8 points a game, 3 rebounds a game, an assist and a half, a steal and a half, and he's shooting the ball at almost 60%. I think JC also said that he's got a positive assist to turnover ratio in those games that he's playing 15 plus minutes. So I, it's baffling to me why he's not getting the playing time. I understand he's a freshman, but he's proven that he can run with these guys. He's proven to be the only one that provides the effort that we need. I'm just at a loss with him. I'm concerned that he may look at other schools next year. I don't want that because we can just see the raw talent and obviously the raw athleticism that he has to work with, and I would just hate to lose him because of a down year like this, you know?
Yeah, and if you guys remember a couple episodes ago, we were talking about talent versus effort. When do you play effort over talent? And I feel like those three guys that we just mentioned, Blocker, Davenport, Pinion, that's your effort over talent right there. Um, I know that we went into a 2-3, and for a 2-3 zone, a lot of the time you are usually hiding guys defensively, but this team is full of guys that we need to hide.
Exactly.
And I think the reason why the 2-3 worked, I've been asking for it for a while, just it didn't have to be a 2-3. But I think the reason why it worked was one, it was a change of pace for Florida. That always catches teams off guard, no matter what level of basketball you're at. Switching defenses will always catch them off guard. But also, we could get in front of somebody. We could get in front of somebody, and we were letting Florida drive by. This happened at Georgia too, in Auburn, and games in the previous months that we just let them go by, go by, go by, get layups, get layups, get layups. Zone does leave you more vulnerable for outside shots, but I'd rather somebody beat us from the outside than drive by and get layups.
Yeah.
But overall, Blocker played amazing. I don't know why Muss hasn't been playing him. Like, we can have conspiracies all we want, whether it's chemistry, whether it's promises to transfers, whether it's whatever, not hustling practice, which I don't see as an issue. It could be anything, but I think he just showed once again that he is a great basketball player as far as on the defensive end, and he has so much potential to make impacts in games like this. And I would just love to see more of him
Mhm.
overall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one thing too that I've noticed, and I've kind of had this thought, this theory for a lot of the season, and I was hopeful that it would get resolved, but to me it just looks like the guys aren't confident in anything that they're doing out there on either side of the ball. And that I don't know if that's all about coaching and having guys knowing where they're supposed to be, if it's about these players not picking up the schemes or just having the talent to do so in some of the areas that we're seeing struggles in. Probably a combination of both. Maybe chemistry still has a factor in it. I'm sure that losing games doesn't provide any confidence. If we're winning games, we probably see guys a little bit more quick to the ball and confident in each move that they make. But the lack of confidence to me, it makes them a step slow defensively because they're second guessing where they're supposed to be. They're not sure if they're supposed to, switch a screen or be up high or hedge one direction. And sometimes I just feel like there's so much going on or different game plans or I don't even know exactly what it is, but you can see that guys aren't confident in what they're supposed to be doing. And that leads to them being slow on closeouts. It leads to, like Matt was saying, not being able to stay in front of somebody. Teams are just getting what they want at will. And it's not like everyone on our team is just the worst defender you've ever seen. Maybe they're not the best defenders, but no team should be letting people just drive by them at the rate that we're seeing. And so I think to me that's kind of where the zone helped a little bit because all of these guys have played a 2-3 zone in their career. They've all played zone at some point. And so I think that maybe helped them to at least have a little bit better understanding in their mind and a little more confidence in where they're supposed to be at that moment. It helped them be a little bit quicker to the ball and be in front of their guys and not just automatically give up driving lanes because there was confusion on help side or anything like that. And so to me, that's where I think the zone has benefited this team because they just haven't gained the confidence of where they're supposed to be. And that has bled over into the offensive side of the ball. You can clearly still see guys when someone's standing up front dribbling the ball, you can see other guys down in the paint or on the opposite side of the court trying to set screens for each other and they don't know who's supposed to be screened or where they're supposed to go or what set, if there even is a set being run. And we've seen stretches of better offense, but more often than not, you can see these guys still just not 100% sure what they're supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
And so it's bled into both sides of the ball. And I just think that's a huge, huge overarching theme issue that has plagued this team. And it's not even so much like we said about the talent. You can question the talent on this team at this point, but I think it's about fit, confidence, chemistry, momentum. There's so many different factors that none of them are going right, and so we're seeing it turn into just these blowout games. And it's just been frustrating. It's sad at this point in the season that we're questioning what we are versus what we expected to be questioning at this point in the season.
Yeah, Brandon, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We don't have an identity. We're not good at defense. We're not a defensive focused team. We're not good at offense. We're not an offensive focused team. We don't put in the effort to balance either of those things out. I think you called it like you saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it before. At this point, we started the season talking about how far is this team going to make it into the tournament, and now I feel like this team has already peaked almost, and hopefully that's not true. Hopefully they can at least become a little bit more uh competitive in some of these games, but where the tournament is a far-fetched, like everything has to be perfect from here on out for it to even be a possibility. And I just never in my wildest dreams that I think that would happen for this team.
Hmm.
To me, I thought that if this team was going to be a bust, it would be similar to last year where they snuck in as maybe an 8 seed and still won a game in the tournament. But gosh, at this point, I mean, Joey, I think you said you're not even sure if this team's going to win to get to 500 on the season, win as many
Hmm.
as they lose. So it's frustrating. Yeah. Do you guys have any last thoughts on this game or kind of where the team is sitting right now before we move on?
No, please move on.
All right. Well, good news. Things don't get any better.
Hey,
I guess it does get a little better. Arkansas does return home for a 2-game homestand. Two more SEC games coming up this week. Up first is Texas A&M. They get them on Tuesday night, and we'll be right back after a quick break with the full Texas A&M breakdown.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 each and every week of the college basketball season. We have a special offer that will be available starting on Tuesday, January 9th, and running through Monday, February 12th, the morning after Super Bowl 58. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, in honor of the big game, you can use the bonus code FIELD158 and you'll get $158 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD158. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive $158 in bonus bets, regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD158 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create separate accounts in each state. It's easy, it's simple, it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the heart of the college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odd boosts, and my favorite, a nice juicy parlay boost. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Field 158.
All right. Arkansas comes home for the first time in 10 days to play a home SEC game. Much needed home stretch, I think. When things aren't going right, being on the road always just amplifies it. It's harder to score on the road. It's harder to keep teams from getting hot on the road. So maybe being at home will help give them a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a spark. But they return home to play Texas A&M, who is currently 10-6 on the season, 1-2 in SEC play. Their lone win actually came against Kentucky on Saturday, right before Arkansas's game tipped off. That was a pretty entertaining game to watch. I just caught the second half of that one. But A&M is just a physical, tough brand of basketball. They always are under Buzz Williams. Uh, they are number 41 in the net rankings, number 35 on KenPom. They have the number 22 adjusted offense, according to KenPom, and only the number 70 defense. And when Arkansas is playing teams that are ranked number 22 or better on offense this year, they're only 1-2 on the season. And when they're playing teams in the top 70 of defense, they are 1-5 on the season. So neither really benefit the Hogs. But the worst part of playing against A&M, the worst part of this matchup is that yet again, they are an incredibly good rebounding team. That was the big key to the game going against Florida. Is Florida was the #1 rebounding team in the country, and we had to find a way to stay competitive on the boards to give ourselves a chance. They got out rebounded by 15 in that game, and it was evident. I mean, it was a 20-point blowout. And like I said, Florida was the #1 overall rebounding team in the country. Well, Texas A&M is the #1 offensive rebounding team in the country. So turn right back around into the fire. They have 7 different players averaging at least 1 offensive rebound a game, including 5 of them averaging at least 2 offensive rebounds a game. And one of their best players, Tyrese Boots Radford, Musselman said in his preview that he might be the best offensive rebounding guard in the country. He averages almost 14 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game at the guard position. He's only 6'2", mind you. I should have said that first. And also 2.5 assists per game. And he's just one of those guys that how physical he plays despite his size is just a tough mismatch for any team that they play against. He's been playing against Devo for 3-4 years now, as long as he's been at A&M, and he's always given Arkansas fits. And so that's definitely a big key matchup to watch, I think. And then they're probably their best player this year, Wade Taylor, has been in a conversation for the best point guard in the country before the season started, and he's lived up to it somewhat, averaging over 18 points a game, over 4 assists per game, almost 2.5 steals per game. A very good player, very talented player. He does have a tendency to be a little inefficient, especially this season, shooting under 28% from long range, averaging over 3 turnovers a game. So that might be something the Hogs can exploit if they can speed him up or make him shoot. Like if they just basically say, if you can score 30, then we're going to lose, but make Wade Taylor beat you with how inefficient he's been shooting this year. So maybe something to watch. And he's averaging roughly 8 3-point attempts a game. So again, maybe you just make him keep shooting those. He's not been shooting well this year. If you can take the other players out of the equation and hope that his inefficiency continues, maybe that's a winning strategy. I don't know. Got to try something at this point. But
Yeah,
what are your
Brandon.
guys' thoughts on this A&M team, just physical team?
Yeah, I was just going to chime in about Taylor and Radford. Those guys, they kind of make up the majority of A&M's offense. The last few games that I looked at, it looked like they were taking over 10 shots a game compared to everyone else on that team taking 5 or less. So definitely want to key in on those guys, which, surprisingly has been something that the Razorbacks have not been terrible about, is taking one guy out of the game. So maybe we're surprised in this one, and we're able to take Taylor, take Radford out, and force a couple other guys to put up some additional shots. But yeah, you're right. They rebound the ball incredibly well. We've got to keep those guys off the glass on the offensive rebound side of the court. But it's gonna be a tough one. It's gonna be just as tough as Florida. Gonna be just as tough as Auburn, Georgia. They're always a extremely, like you said, extremely physical team, and they're gonna give us as much as they can, especially at Bud Walton.
I hope that the home crowd is just as rowdy as they always are, coming back home from those 2 road games. I know we are in a very downtime as a fan base just all around, but I think they can give themselves a shot. My biggest question is, how do they respond? Not just the players, how does Musselman respond? Because these players aren't getting it done. Whatever's happening it's not getting it done. What will Musselman change? What rotation changes will he make? What defensive changes will he make? What offensive changes will he make to get us competitive again? Because right now, every team that has beaten us just looks better than us. End of story. Just looks better than us. So I want to know, how will the staff, the program in general, respond to getting our butts kicked 3 straight games?
Yeah, Musselman said after the Florida loss, the interesting quote from that post-game press conference. He just said, "This group does not have the characteristics of our past 4 seasons." He said, "You can see that we have holes, a lot of different holes in a lot of different areas, and our job as a staff is just to continue to try to do what we can, try to provide teaching points, continue giving scouting reports that are effective, and just do what we're supposed to do." And I don't know about you guys, but that's not super encouraging to just hear him say, we don't have the characteristics of teams that are better than this,
And
and I don't
and
know where they go from there.
that's not his first time saying that either. He's said it in a couple pressers, but before this, it's disheartening. And in the last ones, I think that we took it a little easier than this one. It just seems like Muss is frustrated at this point, which I mean, I can't say that I blame him.
And what about how disheartening it is to the team hearing him say that as well?
Mhm.
You got to think of that too. He's saying these things, and he's been saying this team is unlike any other Arkansas team. This team has holes that no other team that I've had has, and things like that. At what point does that hurt more than help? At what point do you stop saying those things because you're just hurting their confidence even more? And we just talked about nobody seems confident out there. So maybe they're just trying to not get chewed out at this point, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, I agree completely, Matt. I think that's a great point of hurting team morale at a certain point with those kind of comments. But maybe he's hoping to use them as motivation of,
Right.
We are not doing it right now, and we need to have more traits of the last few teams, and we need to figure things out. Maybe that's kind of the strategy in saying those things. But I have the same thoughts of at what point does it just kind of become detrimental to the confidence that we already don't see with this team. So yeah, great point. But yeah, this is another huge game. Like Joey said, it's going to be very tough. Winning it would do a lot for the Hogs. They need to win a lot of games for it to matter at all, but winning this game would be a really good start. All right. Arkansas comes home to play Texas A&M. They have a quick little 2-game homestand at Bud Walton Arena, 2 SEC games. They get Texas A&M on Tuesday and then South Carolina on Saturday. Both of them right around the Texas A&M is around 41 in the net, and South Carolina is around 55 or 54 currently. So we'll start with A&M. Simple question. We've been doing this ever since SEC play started. Hasn't gone well so far, but do you guys think Arkansas wins this game?
No.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't think so.
I know last week I predicted a win in this game, but my confidence is, if you can't tell, completely shot. I think it'll be a 10+ point loss in Bud Walton. I'm not expecting a ton of good to come out of this one, especially with how well A&M played against Kentucky coming off that big win.
Yeah, they're riding that high, so it's only increasing their confidence while we're just keep going at a steady decline in ours, and confidence is a lot.
Yeah. I think I tend to agree. At some point, they will get their first win. It's hard to go winless in SEC play, and I think it probably will be at home to one of these teams. But even more so than even A&M being good or their momentum, just the physicality and the rebounding. I think that's as many weaknesses as we've seen from this team. Physicality and rebounding seems to be the kryptonite. I mean, they are now 1-6 on the season when they have been out rebounded by their opponent, and then 8-1 conversely when they win the battle of the boards. So, I mean, if that's not a telling indicative stat, and that's not just a box score of rebounds, that I feel like that is also inclusive of effort and hustle and who's, playing harder and wanting the rebounds more. And it's a combination of both of those things. And it's very clear when the Hogs are not in the game, when they're not showing the effort, when they're not getting the rebounds, they lose. And it's A&M is going to be tough, even if there is effort. Is the problem? That's the problem. Is even if the Hogs do show effort in this one, it's still going to be hard to out rebound Texas A&M because they're just a good team, a good rebounding team. So, all right, well, win or loss, we're all predicting a loss. But who do you guys think is going to be the player of the game, the MVP for Arkansas in this game?
Matt, I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, well, I am predicting Layden Blocker. As long as he gets the minutes he deserves, I think we're going to see him really lock up on defense. And I think we kind of showed, or Muss kind of showed, that he's looking for some effort, especially with playing Blocker, Pinion, and Davenport all. And I think Blocker's going to show us, not like I said last week, not maybe on the offensive stat sheet, but defensive. I think we're going to see a lot of big plays from him.
Yeah, Matt, I agree. I think I think it'll be a toss up between Caliph Battle and Layden, and I think that this depends on if Musselman wants to send another message. I kind of want to think of last game as whenever he pulled everyone out and put Blocker, put Pinion, put Davenport, put all of our kind of guys that don't see a ton of minutes in. I kind of took it as he was sending a message to his starting unit, like, okay, if you're not going to play, I'm going to take you out. I'm going to put someone in who does. And I think if he takes that same approach this game, I think we'll definitely see a lot of Layden Blocker, and I think that he'll put on a show for us, especially on the effort side of things. But if our starters come out and they're playing hard, they're trying to win a game, as it seems. I think that Battle will finally have his night. We saw what we expected Battle to be in this season in the first couple games, but we haven't really seen it since. So I think Brandon mentioned that he had a total of 9 points in the previous 3 games, and then he played 2 minutes against Florida. So I think that he's due for a big one, and the Bud Walton crowd maybe what does it for him. So we'll see. But I'd really like to see Battle get a good game under him.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Jeremiah Davenport, and he started hot offensively against Florida, and it was a spark early in the game. He was part of that zone that led the little miniature comeback. I think at one point we were down like 27-9 early in the game, and him alongside with Blocker and Pinion kind of cut it back down. I think it was like 8 points at some point that we were losing by, and so good effort from all of them. Pinion and Blocker definitely deserve a lot of props in that game, but I think that we shouldn't forget also that Davenport did play pretty well. And even in this game, even if he's not lighting up the score sheet, like if he's not hitting shots, I think just kind of the effort we've seen from him lately, I think that could be a big factor on some of these smaller A&M guards, these hybrid guards that offensive rebound very well. I think that his activity and maybe I think he's probably the most likely to be the one that boxes these guys out and helps on the defensive glass, and it maybe helps prevent them from getting too many offensive rebounds. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where my mindset is with him, because like you guys have said, we have not seen consistent effort from everyone, but he is one of the guys that is consistently giving it his all, regardless of if his shot is falling or not. So I'm interested to see how he plays in this game, how all of the guards match up with this very good offensive rebounding team. But he's my bet to have the biggest impact among them.
Yeah.
And Davenport's a very positive player as well, so he always seems to help the morale of the team, even when we're not doing so hot. So I like that pick.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then we mentioned it just earlier. After A&M this on Tuesday, Arkansas gets South Carolina also at home on Saturday, and I just we've all kind of given our thoughts that A&M seems to be kind of a long shot to win. But do you think Arkansas wins either of these games? I mean, what do you think Arkansas's record is for this week as a whole?
I I wouldn't be surprised if we went 0-2 this week. I hope that it's not the case, but uh, I don't know. I'm not confident in this team right now. South Carolina's been a solid team all year, but I, I I don't know. It's hard to have confidence based on what we've seen from the Razorbacks. But maybe the Bud Walton effect is at Bud Walton, right?
Yeah, both of them.
Okay. Maybe the Bud Walton effect will be enough to give us a boost that second game. I don't expect a win against A&M in any capacity, but it's possible that we could grab one against South Carolina.
Yeah, I think we're 1-1, and I think we're going to win against South Carolina. I mean, I know South Carolina is doing much better, just similar to Georgia. These 2 games, South Carolina and Georgia, used to be kind of, hey, we're going to win that one, no problem, go on to the next. But now we're that team that, hey, we're going to win this one, go on to the next for other guys. So I still think 1-1. I think we'll go in hopefully with a little bit more confidence against South Carolina. They're maybe not as much of a physical team as A&M is as far as rebounding goes. I think we can hopefully out hustle, outplay them, fingers crossed, and go 1-1 over this stretch.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I'm thinking 1-1 primarily because of that it's at home. Both games are in Bud Walton Arena, and this team is has been weird in the past too, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it wouldn't shock me like a crazy amount if we did come out and beat Texas A&M, just riding the high of Bud Walton's crowd. But it is worth noting that there is snow on the ground here in Arkansas, and that I'm curious how that crowd is going to be on a Tuesday night game with, potentially roads are still might be kind of slick. Maybe some people are making the decision to not make the trip to Fayetteville for that game. So that'll be interesting to see what that crowd shapes up to be. But still, even teams that aren't that great sometimes still just kind of win games that they're not really expected to or not supposed to. So I wouldn't be overly shocked if we came out and beat A&M and then laid an egg against South Carolina. You never know. But I think that we win one of these games at least at home in this home stretch this week. All right. So then last question to close it out, just kind of a vibe check and kind of, I mean, you can kind of tell how we've been feeling, but at this point in the season with how things have been going and things basically have to be virtually perfect from here on out to make the NCAA tournament. And so if they aren't, what are you playing for? If you're one of the players or one of the coaches, what are you playing for at this point in the season? I mean, is it just your personal pride? Are guys thinking about their futures? Are they thinking about the fan base? Is there no motivation? Are they playing for anything at this point in this year? What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I think that's a great question, Brandon. It's really sad that we started this season questioning if this was a championship team. Then we wondered if they were a Final Four team. Now I'm kind of sitting here, and you mentioned it earlier, kind of wondering if we're a team that ends in the positive. Do we end over 500? And our issues just aren't getting resolved. I feel like we talk about similar things every episode. We talk about our defense, we talk about our offense, we talk about the lack of effort, and I there are obviously still there's still the excitement behind the Razorback basketball team. I'm not saying that there's not, and I'm not saying that I've given up on the season, and I'm not saying that the Razorback fan base as a whole has, but it's flat out not the season that anyone expected. So it's kind of hard to say what anyone's playing for now, because with the hopes as high as a championship this year, it's just kind of deflating to see where we're sitting at. I think that they're playing for a lot of pride at this point. I think that they're playing to, at least for a couple of our guys, in preparation for the draft, the NBA draft. What I'd really like to see is some more development behind a couple of our guys, specifically Layden Blocker. I mentioned earlier, I really don't want to lose him in this next year. I obviously don't expect him to go to the league, but if potentially he doesn't see more minutes after the way he's been playing, potentially eyeing the transfer portal, and I'd really like to see him develop under Muss this season as a defensive focused coach and a defensive focused player. But really want to see some development behind some of our guys that we do expect to stay another year.
I have lost a majority of my hope in the season. I know that NCAA tournament is pretty much out the window right now.
Yeah.
But with that being said, what else do we have to lose? It's for Arkansas basketball, it is NCAA tournament or bust, and that just shows how good our program is. Having a winning season but not making the tournament, that's not good enough for us, and that's good for the program. And I agree, we are playing for pride and just the fan base in general. I mean, Arkansas backs these guys. We may not sound like it, but Arkansas does back these guys, and we love this team. And I think that is enough to get them going and get these guys playing for the state. But I want to see us upset some people, ruin tournament chances for other teams, mess up seeding, just be aggravating other fan bases. That's what they should be playing for. That's what I would want to be playing for. I get that our season's down the drain, but let's get after these guys this season and just still have some motivation to keep playing these games with all their effort. Hey, you guys ruined our chances. Let's ruin your guys's. I feel like that's enough to keep these guys playing. Development, pride, all of that is great, but just be a nuisance. And our coach is like that too, I feel like. And so I think that's what will get them going, hopefully, and give us something to at least enjoy here and there.
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail pretty much on the head. Um, there's a dangerous team is a team that has nothing left to lose. Kind of like what Matt said, it could come out and upset pretty much anybody if they can figure some things out. But I just want to see them continue to have something to play for. And I hope that's pride. I hope that's competitive spirit. I hope that's the name on the front of their jersey as well. And I know a lot of these guys are transfers, and in today's day and age, you don't have guys that are coming in that are just diehard Razorback fans when they get here. So I understand that it's different, but I think these guys have still felt the love when they first got here and still feel the support of the fan base, even beyond the frustration of the fan base. So, and I hope that they know that. I hope that they still feel that. So I hope all those things are something that they're playing for as we move forward. Hope they can figure it out and get some wins because I'm kind of tired of losing. But
Agreed.
But that's all we have for you guys today. Reminder, we are brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts under 30 Minutes of Hell. I have been your host, Brandon Baker, joined as always by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. We look forward to some more Razorback basketball, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in to listen. As always, go Hogs.